Hello bakers, today we are looking at a special equipment in the bakery. You have heard of the term bread proofer. In this video, we'll define what is a bread proofer, the synonyms that are used, how that bread proofer works, and how yeast works with the bread proofer to give you that quality bread. Please also check at the correct temperature to set your bread proofer, the time, and even we'll look at the humidity, the amount of humidity that you require. And finally, we will also look at the precautions you need to take to make sure that your proofer is working well and to prevent any other issues. As we start, what is a bread proofer? This is simply a chamber or a box that has been equipped with the right conditions, which is now temperature and humidity for yeast to work properly, to produce carbon dioxide to raise your bread. Now, those are so many things in one sentence. Let me try to explain that yeast is a fungus, is a living organism, and therefore requires the right conditions or environment to work optimally. That is one reason why you need a bread proofer. What synonyms are there in the bread proofer as far as bread proofer is concerned? We have people referring to bread proofer as a proofing box. It's also referred to as a proofing drawer or a proofer oven. In some cases, it's referred to as a fermentation box, fermentation cabinet, bread fermentation cabinet or bread fermentation chamber, dough proofer is also another synonym. We also have other types of proofers like intermediate proofer or retarder proofer, but today we are looking at dough proofer, final proofer. So now, having mentioned that, let's go into the what temperature and what time you need to set your proofer and why. Yeast, being a living organism, a fungus of the class Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Don't ask me how I know that. I'm a scientist by profession, so I've studied deeply about yeast and how it grows and how it multiplies. So yeast, being a fungus of the class Saccharomyces, by the name Saccharomyces cerevisiae, it is a living organism, and therefore it must be provided with the following: sugar, the correct temperature, and humidity, and also time, so that it can work properly and produce carbon dioxide that makes your dough rise. Those four conditions I've mentioned, three of them are actually found in the bread proofer. Sugar will be in your dough, so that is condition number one. Condition number two, you have to have a temperature. This is a bread proofer, small size. You can see it's already cloudy. That means it's already generating the humidity. So that's why when you are working with yeast, you have to come here, set the correct temperature, about 38 degrees centigrade. 38 degrees centigrade, it is the ideal temperature for optimum yeast cells to multiply very fast and work very fast, so that they can produce the carbon dioxide that we need. Remember, they feed on the sugar which is in your dough to be able to do that. In that process, that carbon dioxide is trapped by gluten inside the dough, which is a protein that allows the dough to rise up and therefore giving you that well-risen loaf. However, to mention that you need humidity, a humid environment, and that's why we have this humidity set. You set approximately 70% humidity to allow the yeast to work very well. The other thing that you can see, there is generating humidity from down here. Remember how a bread proofer works. We need to be able to fill water here. My technician is here, he will illustrate. For example, this is the place where we add the water, and he will, because inside there is a coil, and that coil, if you don't add water, what will happen is that it will actually burn, okay? So it will burn that coil, and that is why you must make sure always before you start your baking that this water, there is enough water here. So that marks as precaution number one. The other most important precaution, you have to set the right temperature, 38 degrees centigrade. 36 to 38, because that is the optimum temperature for yeast. If you set very high temperatures, what will happen? You will kill the yeast cells instead of giving them good environment. And that means that your bread will not proof at all, because there will be no yeast to eat the sugar and to produce that carbon dioxide that makes your dough rise. And therefore, if you exceed here, this is the temperature that you must be careful with. You cannot exceed 55 degrees centigrade, because yeast cells start to die rapidly, and we enter into a phase we call death phase. Death phase will render your proving process too long, and even you will not get the desired results. And therefore, you must maintain the right temperature and the humidity. And the other precaution you need to see is overproofing. You must know the time, depending on the amount of yeast you add in your dough. That time, the quantity of yeast also determines how long it will proof. If you add the right amount of yeast, the recommended, because you're not supposed to add excess. If you add the recommended amount of yeast according to your regulations, you will find that you need about 25 to 35 minutes. Your bread will be well proofed, and therefore you can proceed with baking. And therefore, this is very important. All these things are related. The volume of yeast, the temperature you set, the humidity you set. If you do the right set of temperature, the right humidity, the right amount of yeast, your process should not take that long, and soon you should be able to bake your bread. Having said that, this bread proofer here is a 16 tray capacity, but for bread, Kenyan loaf, because we use very long tins, it will proof 40 loaves at a go. So if you have a single deck oven, 2 deck oven, even a 3 deck oven, this would be an ideal equipment for you. For this double chamber, it's basically double of that. It's 32 tray, and it is basically good for if you have a 3 deck 9 tray or bigger oven than that, to be able to work well with this proofer. So I think I want to end this discussion. I have clearly given you the reasons and the things that you need to check to make sure that your bread proofer works well. And I forgot to show you that it is equipped with a temperature sensor. This temperature sensor makes sure that when I set my temperature at 38 degrees centigrade, that this chamber will not exceed 38 degrees centigrade. And that is very important to maintain a good environment for yeast. It has also a humidity sensor. This senses the water and the humidity, and also there is another humidity sensor inside here to make sure that I don't exceed 60 to 70%, and therefore I prove my bread on time. Thank you so much for watching this episode. I hope after this time you understand what is a bread proofer, what is a fermentation box, what is a fermentation chamber, what we mean by all these synonyms. And thank you so much for watching.